Hey boys and girls, back today with a special video. It's going to be a little bit longer than most, but today we're going to talk about one of the most enigmatic as well as terrifying entities in the Risk-of-Rain universe, since we now have more information on it since the update, and it's the Void Reaver. A lot of people love the Void Reaver for many reasons. I don't like them. They're scary as fuck, and I wouldn't want to meet them anywhere, anytime, ever. But to begin to understand the existence and the purpose of the Void Reavers, we have to return to their lore log so we gain a bit of understanding and clarity on how they operate in the Risk-of-Rain universe. Beginning with the Void Reavers lore log, which gives us plenty of information, it basically reads, I saw something last night on my post, a giant crab. It came out of thin air and started tapping along the perimeter with one of its forelegs, like it was checking for an opening. It checked for a few meters at a time and then disappeared, again and again. So I figured out its pattern. I waited for it, where it would appear next. My rifle was aimed at empty space, and then suddenly, that empty space became a target, but I couldn't pull the trigger. It turned to look straight at me, and I was paralyzed. It wasn't fear, it was something else. It was talking into my brain. The words it used weren't any language I knew, but it compelled me to freeze. The experience wasn't something I can fully describe with words. I couldn't pull the trigger. I couldn't even reach for the radio. I couldn't turn to look away. While my head was ringing, it resumed its routine. I could only stand and watch. It finished its check and then returned its attention to me as though I were an afterthought. I could feel it take something from me, but I can't remember what it was, and then it left. My guess was that it got whatever it wanted because it hasn't been back since. Something is still wrong with my head. I can't even seem to work up the power to speak. Should I even tell anyone? Is knowing somehow worse? And what about all those times I heard the same sound before I even came to this awful place? Okay, just from this lore log entry, we know that the Void Reavers have the ability to teleport and move across time or space at will. And we also know that they have the ability to steal or take information from the minds of individuals or organisms whenever they so please. And also, according to the lore log, the survivor says all the other times he heard the sound before he encountered the Void Reaver for the first time. He mentions that he didn't hear the sound before, that it was a unique sound. So after the Void Reaver stole information from his mind, it caused some sort of brain damage in his mind. So he couldn't remember or recall certain things. He couldn't speak. And he says, what about all the other times I heard the sound? Which means after the Void Reaver stole the information, it caused a lot of dysfunction in his brain as well as his memories, to the point where he thought he was hearing the Void Reaver sound long before he ever arrived on the Risk-of-Rain planet. But the next piece of lore that gives us more insight into the Void Reavers is the lore log for Akrid, which is very insightful into what the Void Reaver's purpose is and how they actually go about completing it in the Risk-of-Rain universe. Theoretically, the true contents of the cell were just a mess of atoms. The structure of the contents in each cell, living, weapon, whatever, was categorized, sequenced, and then turned to juice and cured into solid gems, an incredibly efficient and lossless format. And yet, when the cell containment broke and emergency protocols resequenced that mess of atoms back into the creature known as Akrid, he already knew. Maybe he was somehow conscious in his juice gem state. Maybe they injected him with information. Maybe he was connected to their psionic network. Maybe he just made it up. But he knew that the strange crustaceans that scrambled his atoms and imprisoned him here in a place unknown were panicking. Something had gone wrong in a world where variables were not allowed. something was leaking. They may have finally imprisoned something that could not be contained. Akrid's lore log is extremely important because it finally reveals really what happens to those that encounter the Void Reavers when they take action against them. In Risk of Ring 2, upon dying, there are many different on-death text messages that can be read in the lower left corner. And they all usually say different things, but usually they confirm your death in the game. Except for when you're killed by a Void Reaver or caught in their explosion and technically die, this is what is read. You have been detained. Await your sentence at the end of time. Blank has vanished without a trace, usually referring to whatever survivor you're playing. But you aren't given a direct connotation or inference to your death. You are taken away by the Void Reavers or otherwise detained. And from Akrid's lore log, you can read, this is what happens when you are detained by the Void Reavers. You are broken down to the point of being atoms and sealed or stored in some type of stasis, so you cannot do anything or affect anything overall. So when you are broken down and split into the atoms and converted into the juice/jewel-like state overall, you are kept within the void fields, which serves as a prison for whatever reason, but we'll move along to that next. And as we know from Akrid's lore log, the void fields serve as a prison, and they're also a place that exists outside of time. As we know in game, also when you are clearing the void cells, the clock stops and you aren't affected by time overall. And for clarification on what types of items are kept within the void cells, you have to read the void fields lore log itself that expands on this and gives you a better insight into what these items are or what kinds of things they are. It basically reads, the cells were for dangerous creatures. The cells were for rare, powerful relics of exceptional strength. The cells were for ancient automata of war. The cells were for scientists and inventors and explorers. The cells were for gods. The cells were for everything. Now, from the information that we've been given in the updated lore logs, we can draw a lot of conclusions about the purpose of the Void Reavers and their existence, as well as how they operate. But with the information we've been given, you have to think about when you first encountered the Void Reavers in Risk of Ring 2 as you progress through a run. Void Reavers generally spawn later into the game or later into your run when you have a significant amount of items. If you skip over the bazaar between time and just go straight until you get later in the game where you are significantly powerful, then Void Reavers will spawn over and over again at an increasing rate to a certain point, which shows that they probably don't consider you a threat until you have a certain level of power or damage overall. So if we consider this as the criteria for the Void Reavers detaining or taking action against any individual organism or thing, it actually brings a lot of light to their purpose. But this also raises the question of what are the Void Reavers' relation to Mithrix and Providence, or just any of the Ascendant beings, because the Void Reavers on commencement don't spawn heavily until you kill Mithrix, aka a god, or one who could be considered a god. Before that, you don't really see them spawn readily outside of a loop. So they must have some type of contract or some type of interaction with these so-called gods or ascendant beings, such as Mithrix. Because when you beat the game in Risk of Ring 2 after killing Mithrix, when you escape from the moon is detained and swallowed into the void realm, or the void fields rather, and we have no idea why this occurs. Maybe it's because the contract ensues that Mithrix will be kept there as his burial ground, or any ascendant beings, or maybe they could be revived by the Void Reavers in some way. We have no idea, but we just know that they can also serve as protectors for those that are powerful to an extent, and also seek to detain those that are too powerful to another extent. From this information, we can infer that the Void Reavers operate on a doctrine of MEP, which means monitor, detain, and protect. They function to monitor individuals that become too powerful, or as the Void Cells said, that the cells are for everything. Anything or anyone can become worthy of being detained by the Void Reavers, whether it's an inventor, explorer, item, machine, anything that's deemed too powerful, which by whatever criteria that the Void Reavers deem could be detained. So they monitor for that reason and detain them because they can probably upset the balance of ecosystems, universes, and cause massive destruction. And the protect would mean that they serve to protect the ascendant individuals such as Mithrix and Providence. For many reasons, they probably could work together with them to keep certain things from happening, as the Void Reavers worked with Mithrix for whatever reason. So they could have been trying to keep the balance for some reason, one or the other, which basically gives us the understanding of why the Void Reavers exist. They exist to not kill, but to detain things that may be too powerful, and to protect and work with the ascended beings that already exist in the world to keep these things in check. But let me know your thoughts on the Void Reavers, why they do what they do, why they detain things in the Risk of Rent universe. Like, sub, share, and I'll see you guys next time. Stay safe. I'll try to keep dropping tons of vids for you guys and expand the content pool.